Hi, so I just have a few comments on your paper. I thought that your paper was very well organized. I mean, the thought process was very well thought through, and I thought that your ideas were really good about the movie, and so I can tell that you really thought through your paper and you really thought to do a good job on it. There are a few things that I have to say, and one thing I do want to mention is that. Um, Based on that pyramid that I showed at the beginning of the semester, that pyramid for effective writing, the bottom, very bottom, talks about focus, um, how adapting to the needs of the audience is absolutely necessary, but also along with that focus comes the idea that you write a clear thesis statement, and then every paragraph and every topic sentence points back, and every example points back to that thesis statement in the long run. And so I have a few comments that I make at the beginning of each paper, and mine are based mostly on the focus of the paper as well as finding that deepest why, the content that you need to place in there. So those are the first two sections at the base of that pyramid. The reason why that's important is because without those two things, it is near impossible to write. Well, I would actually not say near. It is impossible to write an effective argument. So I will tell you that this paper I feel needs the most work in that area. But I think you did a good job. So keep up the good work, Kylie. Along with that, I do want to say that I make a few comments at the beginning of the paper, and then it's almost like I set you free because I know that you are a very smart person. I know that most students are able to just take what I can give them and apply it to the rest of the paper. And so I try not to change your paper because it is yours. And so what I do is I make comments teaching principles of writing, and how maybe that would how changing it might be successful in fulfilling these principles that I have learned, that would help to make your argument more effective. However, it is in the long run your own paper, and so you don't feel obligated to make any changes that I tell you, but take these principles, and apply them to your own paper because it is yours. So I would really suggest getting me the paper during the week as soon as you can, and then we can go through a lot more levels of the pyramid, and I can teach a lot more principles. But good job. Okay, so starting out with this first sentence right here. I think that this is your thesis statement. However, I'm not necessarily sure. I know that you mentioned something very similar in the first sentence, which is a great topic sentence. And so I'm not sure if that is the argument, or that each individual portion, uh, each individual sentence leading up to this thesis statement is what you're going to be arguing. I'm not really sure that connection there. So either making that more clear or writing that out in the thesis statement is always effective. So a good thesis statement seeks to tell what you are arguing and how you're going to argue it according to Harvard Writing Center. So the how usually includes specific arguments that you'll be focusing on throughout the paper. And so the reason why this thesis statement is so important is because it focuses your argument so much, and it allows the reader to understand exactly what will be discussed. So I know that it's contrary to what I had learned earlier in high school, or even in earlier classes here at BYU Idaho, within my academia. However, writing out this thesis statement and telling exactly what's going to be talked about throughout the paper is very important. So I see that you mentioned that because of their neglect, the government should be held completely responsible for the events of the movie. I agree with this, and it's a very, very good tie-in to everything that you're discussing in the paragraph. But also, I would suggest writing specific examples that would make the government completely responsible, because I believe that that is what you're arguing, is that the government is responsible because of their neglect. But in what ways are you arguing that they neglected? So maybe even mentioning those, each reason that you're going to discuss in each paragraph. So that doesn't mean like you have to create a big list, but usually a paper like this includes 3 different and separate arguments that back up this thesis statement. Just because it is a short paper, having 3 body paragraphs that should each have an individual argument that backs up that thesis statement. So that's another reason why the thesis statement is important, is because it focuses your argument. So maybe mentioning the main arguments of each paragraph, and including that in this sentence would be very helpful, and including that into future thesis statements is also effective. All right, so here's another thing. I think that you have a great topic sentence. So I'm just going to mention a few things. Each paragraph should back up a portion of the thesis, and I believe that your topic sentence here does a good job of doing that. However, later on, I do believe that some of the topic sentences are not tied back into your thesis statement, such as this one right here. It would only have been completely logical for them to have a surveillance team on Kaplan's room and anywhere else Kaplan was reported to be. So that though that may be true, what exactly, how does that tie into your thesis statement? This is something that must be included either in the sentence following or within that same topic sentence. So after each topic sentence, a deeper explanation is usually necessary. I mean, I would mention always necessary, but I know that in some cases it's not necessary to, I guess, explain yourself further. But in many cases in these papers it is. So, for example, I wrote here an example of a topic sentence, and then I give a little bit of an explanation. So this is an unrelated topic sentence, but it does help to illustrate the need for an explanation after each topic sentence, a deeper why, as Jenny described last week. So right here, my topic sentence is, because the basketball is too flat, I do not want to play. Okay, so this could mean so many different things to so many different people. So a flat ball could mean like a completely flat ball, or just a little flat, and that means that I'm a drama queen if it's just a little flat and I don't want to play just because, you know, it's a little bit flat. But an explanation as to how this ball is flat and why it is important is key. Look, let me illustrate this. Because the basketball is too flat, I do not want to play. Last night, it was sitting out in the cold and it lost air pressure, and now I'm unable to dribble. So do you see how an explanation helps to clarify? The reason why I do not want to play is because I'm unable to dribble. The reason why it lost air pressure is because it was cold last night and the ball sat out in that cold. So do you see how this helps to clarify? And that's important after every topic sentence. It's also important after every explanation, every example that you give, every summary, which would be considered an example in my opinion, and evidence that backs up your topic sentence. After each individual example, there should always be an explanation as to how that connects back to the topic sentence, as well as how it connects back to the thesis statement. And so something that is important is, when you do this, You also can find out whether or not your argument is strong enough, whether or not it backs up your thesis statement, whether or not it backs up your topic sentence. And so when you think about this and you're going through and you're writing, it should always be tied back into your thesis statement. Once again, I love this topic sentence. The government could and should have acted sooner than they did. So each topic sentence is making a claim, an argument, an individual argument. Now, how do these tie back into the thesis statement? I feel like the rest you can do based on the things that I've given you. I will mention that maybe a review of the evidence hamburger that Jenny gave last week would be very helpful. An evidence hamburger, what that means is that before every example, you give an introduction into your example that you're about to give. And then after each example, you describe how that connects to your overall argument, just like I was describing to you. And so each bun in between the meat, which is the hamburger, which completely makes up the hamburger, the first bun is that introduction. The last bun is the explanation as to how that connects to the overall argument. And the meat would be the example that you're giving, the summary that you're giving. And so that's one thing that I would also suggest that would be very helpful to you throughout your paper. And all in all, Kylie, I think you did a good job. These are specific principles that I have given you. If I can get your paper earlier, we can go over individually all of these sections. Something that helps me, and I'm going to send you this document. I'm just going to switch over, and hopefully you can see this. Let me switch this right here to this right here. Okay. So here's the document. This document has been very helpful to me in organizing my thoughts. And it is something that I have used to help me to just create an effective argument to my thesis statement. Okay, so first of all, in this first section is the main claim, and asking yourself who your audience is. So who is your audience? And then right here, what specific needs does your audience have? And then lastly, how can you adapt your thesis statement to fit the needs of your audience? So remember, a thesis statement tells you what you're arguing as well as how you are arguing it. Okay, so this might be a little bit confusing. I could change this up a little bit, but each individual argument, as I've written it, for these small papers, represents a separate paragraph. So for every paragraph that I write, for every argument that I write, I always use two evidences, because then I can tie those two evidences back into the topic sentence, and then that topic sentence back into the thesis statement. So this is a good way of organizing your argument, of getting the content that you need as well as the focus that you need for your specific audience. So first of all, writing in this section what your first argument is, and then how that supports your thesis statement. So what is your first topic sentence, and how does that support your thesis statement? So then this evidence number one is an example that you use. Like, for example, North by Northwest, you have different examples that you use from the film. That would be an evidence number one for this argument. So a specific evidence that backs up your argument number one for that first paragraph. And then think about these two things and write them in here. How does this evidence support the argument? Does it fit audience needs? And then how might it not support your argument? So how might this not support your argument? How might this evidence not support it? And then this will help to create a stronger, deepest why, a stronger connection between this and your thesis statement, and this and your topic sentence. And then the second evidence. So you do not have to use two evidences. You can use one, you can use two, you can use three, you can use four. however evidences and however many arguments you need to sufficiently argue your point is the amount of examples and evidences that you need for your paper. So it depends upon every paper. And then here at the bottom, I have the outline of your paper. So each individual, I guess, number, the big numbers, represents a different paragraph. And it does not include the conclusion paragraph. And it does not include all of the portions of a good, effective paragraph. However, it gives the main and most important parts to an argument. So if you follow this outline and if you fill out this document before you start writing each time, then I can tell you that this will help to organize your thoughts and to bring a main focus to your paper and an ability to include the content and the deepest why that you need in order to help your audience. So these are just a few suggestions. I'll send this document to you and I'll send you back this paper. I think that you did a good job, and I hope this helps out helps out a little bit for your paper.